Before we get started with the exercises, let's talk a little bit about intuition. Let's try to understand what's going on in chapter 1. It's something I like to do, especially when I teach at the Blackboard as well, so that instead of just starting with the exercises straight, we will try to understand the main notation and scenario a bit more. It also helps you follow and what happens with the exercises. I think the most interesting question we can ask in chapter 1 is, what do we mean by present value? Well, actually, the most interesting question is, what do we mean by money? But that's probably something that's better discussed in another course. So here, let's talk about what do we mean by present value. Now, when we ask this question, what we really mean is, well, the present value of what? The present value of what? And when? When do we mean the present is? So if we look at a timeline, then normally we say the present value at time t of a payment stream. So the present value of time t of certain payments. Okay. Sometimes we say the present value at time t of some past payments. So of payments that have occurred in the past. If we do that, then what we actually mean is the accumulated value of past payments. And that's what we call U of t in the book. If we talk about the present value of future payments, so payments that occur after time t, then what we mean is actually, well, the present value of future payments, then it means that we want to find the discounted value of future payments. And in the book, we kind of call that V of t. So for example, in the continuous version, the V of t is evaluated as an integral from t to n, because n is when the contract ends. And when we look at the accumulated value, the integral is evaluated from 0 to t, because we start the contract at time 0. And when we stand in the present at time t, then what we mean is we want to look at, well, how much has been accumulated since the beginning. They also have two other words that they kind of use. V of 0. So if we stand at time 0 and look at all of the future payments discounted back to time 0, then this is what they call the initial present value. And on the other hand, if they stand at time n and think about U of n, which is the accumulated value of all of the past payments, then this is what they call the terminal present value. So it kind of gets confusing. Like when we say present value, do we mean V? Do we mean U? Well, it kind of depends on the context. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Another thing that's kind of interesting is if you look in the book, whenever they have something to do with V of t, what they actually write is something like B of t minus C of t. You kind of get this cropping up whenever you look at V of t. However, whenever you look at U of t, what you get cropping up is this. It's C of t minus B of t. And then you kind of go like, well, what's that about? Why doesn't he tell us why we do that? Like, why do we change the signs? When the only difference really is that in one we look at the past and in the other we look at the present, not the present, the future. And in order to understand that, we have to tell the story about the bank and the man. So that's actually not a very interesting story. It's just a description of how the world works nowadays. Most of the money is all gathered in huge houses that we call financial institutions, or Google. But here, let's just call this the bank. And then we have you. You're a student, and you probably receive SU or earn a salary of some kind. So once a month or twice a month, you deposit some money in the bank, and that's what we call contributions in the book. That's what we call contributions. C for contributions. And then the bank every so often offers you some benefits, or that's more if it's a pension fund, but also sometimes you make withdrawals from the bank. That's also what we call the benefits. All the money going out from the bank and back to you. That's B of T. So we have C of T and we have B of T. Now, why is it that in one case we look at contributions as positive and in another case we look at benefits as positive? Well, let's take a look here. From the little man's perspective, what this person, which is you or me, is interested in is how much do I have in savings? That's normally what we think about when we stand from the customer's perspective. Later on, when we change, because sometimes you can also have a bank on this side and a bank on the other side, then it's more like you have the customer and you have the company, the firm that offers you some kind of financial service. So from the customer's perspective, the customer is more interested in the savings. So what are my savings in the bank? And well, if we look at that, then that is exactly U of T. Because, well, my savings are given by, well, I contribute, I deposit some money in the bank and withdraw some money from the bank at all times. And I accumulate all of that up until now, and those are my savings. So that's why, from this person's point of view, C of T should be positive. And since when we look at savings, we look at all the past payments, then U of T, the accumulated value, is mostly denoted with C as the positive symbol. Okay, now what if we are standing from the bank's perspective? So the bank. Well, what the bank is interested in more than anything else is to know, if I have an amount of money now, can I invest it in some way, or can I make that money grow so that in the future I can meet my future liabilities? I can pay out all the benefits that I have promised to my customers. So what the bank is interested in is future liabilities. And it kind of lies in the word, really, that when you consider future liabilities, so many eyes, when you consider those, then you are looking into the future. And the thing that is the number here, for example, if your future liability is 1 million kroners in present value, then it is B, it is the benefit that has the positive sign. So your future liabilities are denoted by V of T, which is also why V of T has B as the positive sign. So that's kind of the motivation behind the difference between U of T and V of T, not only in that one denotes the accumulated value of past payments and the other denotes the discounted value of future payments, but also that they actually have opposite signs. So that was that. I will do one more video about intuition and background for chapter 1, and that video will focus on how to draw payment streams and how to think about, well, payment streams.